what you think. Talk about the issues of the world. What kind of spice you wanna be? Tell me where you wanna travel. Do you believe in luxury? What's your hidden passion? What makes you so unique? Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host, and I am so delighted to be here with you this evening. Boy, do I have a treat for you. Many of you have probably heard about the controversy, if you will, regarding mask in Leon County schools. So today I have two very special guests with me. Dr. Benny L. Bolden of our Frank Nims Middle School and the Vice Chair of Leon County Schools and also District 3 Board Member, the Honorable Darryl Jones. So, without further ado, welcome, my brothers. Fellow Rattlers, LTers, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, we're all of that. I'm on Conversations with Nicole page. I don't see it.
It should be up and you should be able to share. And for those of you who are tuning in, please, by all means, share, like, and this is an interactive conversation. So we welcome your comments and your questions. We're going to get started, though, with a few questions of mine. But before we get started, I want to hear from Dr. Bolden first. I want you to just kind of give us the landscape of how you have been, maneuvering since the pandemic in March of 2020 and where our Frank Nims Middle School is today.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Ms. Everett, for the invitation to speak today. I am honored. This is, in my mind, just as I was giving an interview on CNN. I hold you in high regards. And I'm equally proud to stand with my brother and an individual who need no introduction, and that is the Honorable Darryl Jones, who continue to do and be a trailblazer for our community. So I would be remiss if I did not give him his shout out and his kudos. The Bible says that man is worthy of double honor, and I do believe in giving him his honor.
All right.
And so in regards to the question, I think what was important for us is to not only look at where students was, and that is a big important piece, and I know we're going to talk about students, but what for me, I needed to look at where my faculty and staff was. And it's super important because sometimes they get left out in the conversation of where kids are. Mm-hmm. But this is the only time I think I like trickle down to economics. That's that whole old mindset of thinking. But if teachers and faculty and staff are happy, kids will be happy. It translates into their experience. And so what was important for me coming out of the pandemic and where our faculty and staff was and the demand, I knew it would require more of me. And so I spent a lot of time on this campus. I've mentioned this before and put on my Facebook page. When they get here in the morning, they see my car, and when they leave in the afternoon, because I have to lead by example. And that example is not always what we say, but it's what they see. And that was important for me. And then also gauging the atmosphere of what our teachers were just absolutely feeling. I just went on a mantra in our building, meeting with all of our teachers in various subject areas, the math department, the English department. And it wasn't to talk about data. It wasn't talking about kids. It was to ask them, how are you? Where are you? What are you feeling? What is the experience you feeling? And then what can I, as the administrator, do to support you to make sure you have the resources needed to be your absolute best self? And those some of the things that we're doing. And when you do those things, now we can look to the kids. Now we can look to providing the resources, because then our teachers are happy. The custodian is happy. The paraprofessional is happy. And all of the individuals who are wrapped up in this idea of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And so I think that was, important to share about what are we doing in retrospect to the virus, but really putting a light on what we're doing for faculty and staff.
Absolutely. No, very important point, because this has been a lot. There's been so much that has transpired from that time to this, and we're still going through. We're not out of the woods quite yet.
Right.
So, Mr. Jones, please give us an overview of what the middle of March of 2020 was like, and give us just a timeline, just a brief timeline of from that point to where we are now as we relate to Leon County schools.
Well, let me just say, I like Dr. Bolden. I'm delighted to be a part of this conversation and to share this conversation with you, most specifically, Nicole, my classmate from Florida University back in 19. But I can listen to Dr. Bolden talk all day. I really can, because it is that passion and intellect, as well as ingenuity, that is emblematic of the types of leaders, administrators, faculty persons, staff who constitute the Leon County School District. You can hear his genuine concern and passion for all of the constituents that he leads, both faculty, staff persons, students, as well as the parents and the families from which our children come. All of them are very, very important to us. Dr. Bolden will tell you that when they left for spring break in 2020, everybody thought that they would return to school on Monday. That was not our reality, and it was at that time that our nation shut down. But the school district realized that there were a segment of children who were going to be adversely impacted because they relied upon the schools for more than just instruction. They relied upon our schools for meals and for services that we were providing in terms of wraparound services to meet the needs of the student and their families. And so Dr. Bolden and Nims Middle School was one of the places that was immediately mobilized. And they were a place where children and their families could get food, because many people were blindly unaware that the meals that we provide, particularly at Title I schools, for a lot of our children, those meals and those book bag lunches and meals that they were taking with them to sustain their families over the weekend and for dinner were vitally important. And so we had to be responsive. And so we had to harness the goodwill of community partners like Second Harvest and our local food banks to make certain that those needs were met. Then, if that were not enough, Nicole, while we were staying in place and not back in school, a great number of violent activities occurred in the shadow of the Nims and the Bond Elementary School and Pineview Elementary School. And so we had to harness all of the intellect of our principals across the district, across District 3, as well as engage mental health counselors to deal with what we knew was the trauma of our young people. Dr. Bolden does so much that he's probably forgotten how we had to go down to Swakoko Village and go and hug and love on our kids after our kids had witnessed violent crimes. We saw them in the news that as they were on these crime scenes, little children had witnessed these crimes. And so the school district and the superintendent and all of the district had to come and bring our resources to bear to serve families. When we came back to school, we had to make certain that we harnessed the intellect of a community. Nicole, one of the things that I take great delight in is that Tallahassee is one of the most educated communities in the country, with two major research institutions here. So we decided we would harness that intellect to provide a framework for how we came back to school last year, as we studied in two different locations, providing a hybrid education in both on-site as well as at home, and making a major investment in Chromebooks so that all children would have the same access to the same level of technology to get their coursework done. And then we relied upon the community to make sure we were able to get them the types of devices that they need so that they could get online and these devices could become operable. And then we find ourselves in this brand new school year where after a full year of masking ourselves and doing everything we could to socially distance and to keep ourselves safe, when we came back this school year and we wanted to do the same to make certain that we provided optimal environments for instruction as well as learning, well, we as a school district wanted to make choices that were narrowly and finely tailored for our community.
Mm-hmm.
We were seeing our numbers. We knew what the impacts were. We knew what the mortal implications of COVID had been on our school district and our community. We knew the names of our neighbors and even young people whose lives had been lost because of COVID. And we said one person who we would lose was one too many. And we wanted to make certain that we created the type of policy that was narrowly tailored to our community based upon what we saw as our own community's demographics, our community statistics and metrics. And then, let me get that, sorry.
It's okay.
Nicole, I'm talking and banging on the table at the same
You
time.
can't be getting excited now.
I can't get too excited. But my point is that we are where we are now. I hope that was a quick enough little timeline for us. But
yes.
But that's what and now we're where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And regrettably, because we wanted to make certain that we were able to make narrowly tailored, finely tuned decisions based upon our community, we now, as of last Friday, no good deed goes unpunished. We are now, the governor and the commissioner of education have decided to no longer pay school board members.
So I'm going to get to that in just a moment, but I want either one of you or both of you to talk about the difficulties that you've had using masks in the classrooms, and maybe Dr. Bolden, you can kind of speak to that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. And one thing I'm going to say is we had to adapt to this thing, this mask thing, and though it comes with some grief, it was what's best for all individuals. We do know that the best place for our kids to be, and especially in this community, is right here in this building, because we're going to make sure that they get the best that they need each and every day. We're going to make sure that they get fed every day. And here's the bottom line. Before I go into the mask in the classroom, I have to say this. A lot of our kids don't come from great homes. And so they are in an environment where we told them for a whole year, you can't come outside, but you can stay inside with the rapist that is molesting you each and every day. And if you come outside, there is a virus outside that can kill you too. Here is what I do know, that a lot of times our kids, even our very own kids, don't have a problem coming to school and talking to a counselor where they don't feel that comfortable talking to a mom and dad. Not that mom and dad are terrible. It's just they have a level of comfortability on a campus. And it's super important that we talk about mental anguish and all of these things. Well, we're not addressing those needs when kids are not in school. I didn't even get to academics yet. I'm just talking about their social interaction with other children and making sure that is addressed first. So when we get to math, when we talk about the difficulties of math, yes, it's difficult, but I'm gonna be honest with you. From day one of what we saw in this academic year, I had to pull this because this is something I bought. It's a voice amplifier. I bought it for every one of my faculty and staff members. The district didn't ask me to buy it. I used the resources that I've given to make sure that those teachers have that. Why? Because I want them to be actively engaged in the idea of this thing called learning. And so even with a mask, and they have this conversation that they can't hear the teacher, all of that is incorrect. Because what we see, and I'm posting pictures each and every day, we see full engagement of our kids. Why? Because they are earning for that level of expectation, somebody to believe in them, somebody to educate them, somebody to push them forward. And so I can't say there are difficulties with math. We're difficult in terms of conversations about math, but there's no difficulties with math in class, especially if the outcome is always going to be students won.
Okay. Wait. Hold on there.
What he's talking about, what I think is so critical, right, And that's why I continue to talk about narrowly tailored, right?
Mm-hmm.
We needed to get our kids back in school, right? That staying away, that hybrid situation was, see, what that was a strategy. That was not intended to be a way of life. We needed to get our kids back in the classroom so that we could do what we do best, not just teach, but love on our kids.
Yes.
Right? I tell one thing I love about Leon County schools, I say this all the time, they love first and they teach second. And you got principals who love first and lead second. And that was critically important. These kids were dealing with the whole isolation because of safety issues that were culturally manifest in my district, most specifically, that we had to respond to, right? That doesn't necessarily manifest itself in other districts. That's why my voice is so important, because I know that my circumstances are unique to my district. Now, when I brought my kids back, when I continue to talk about the importance of math, I know that I've got a greater number of my teachers. I bet you right now, Dr. Bolden has teachers who are dealing with immunocompromised diseases like sickle cell, lupus, right? So having unmasked children in a classroom like that, I want to teach, but they also want to live. Right. And so when we make those types of choices where we just provide the medical opt-out, right, because a kid may have IEP issues, then that's one thing. But to force a teacher to stand before a class or students who may be dealing with these same types of medical issues, right? We want to make certain that all of our kids can come back. And if all of our kids come back, we need to do everything we can to guarantee their safety. And if it made good sense for us to wear masks when we came back last school year, when we were in a hybrid situation, with everybody coming back right now, if you go from a density of 15,000 to a density of 30,000, that's all the more reason why you wear masks, because you have a greater and higher incidence of infection.
Absolutely.
So it was just, our challenge, and I apologize, Nicole.
It's okay.
And so you got to cut me off.
I feel the emotion there. I feel it.
Common, Nicole. And this is what we wrestle with.
Yes.
Right? Common sense ain't always good, but Benny wants every kid and every teacher to be taught in optimal situations.
Yes.
Indeed. So you talked about your district. Talk a little bit about what your district, who your district is in terms of the makeup of the schools in your district.
Well, first of all, I can't speak for anybody else's district. Not mind you, let me be clear. I am the school board member for all of Leon County.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Yes. And I serve all children and all families and all schools of Leon County. However, the Mecca has moved south. And the Mecca is District 3. And in District 3, I've got the best principals and the best schools and the best students in all of Leon County. Every last one of my schools are Title I. And what we do with leaders like Benny Bolden, we change the narrative. Yeah. District 3 and Title I schools constitute what I call an opportunity zone. Okay. Opportunities for learning, opportunities for service, opportunities for teamwork, opportunities for quality instruction and engagement, and the best parents in all of Leon County.
Okay.
And so I represent from all of my schools are Title I, stretching all the way from my kids, my patriots, not my patriots, my frontiersmen at Fort Braden, my Patriots at Sable Palm, my Pineview Jaguars. I got my Bond Elementary Eagles. I got my Nims Trojans. I've got my Oak Ridge Eagles, and I've got my Rickards Raiders.
All righty.
Right. And then, if that were not enough, although they're not in my district, all Title I schools are mine.
Okay. All right. So just so folks who may not know what Title I means, just tell them what that means.
Title I means that those children come from working class families.
Okay. Very good.
Right, and that the lion's share of those numbers in a number greater than 65%, those children come from working class families, which means they are entitled to free or reduced lunch.
Okay. So, how has COVID-19 impacted Title I schools specifically?
Well, I'd like for Dr. Bolden and I to both answer it, but the
Okay.
time that we spent away when we gave parents the option to go into a to take a hybrid model, either one, staying at home and learning virtually, or coming on site, teachers had to teach, or one teacher had to teach in two separate platforms. Our teachers are the real heroes. We gave them a mandate, they responded, and for an entire school year, our children remained engaged. But we know that for some children, learning virtually is not necessarily the best way to learn. So we know that we have suffered learning loss because of that. We know that we've endured learning loss because of those first 4 months in 2020 after we went home from May. We still continued from May until June into a school year. Then we did not have the same activities that help to undergird instruction over the summer. So what we had done as traditional education as a nation had been upturned. So who's most egregiously affected by that? Our students and our children. So when we talk about a Title I kid who already may have come to us woefully unprepared when they came to us in kindergarten, that same kid who we're already putting in place the types of different types of paradigms of instruction to help to mitigate what had already been existing learning loss, that was then exacerbated by the pandemic and the isolation of the hybrid instruction and not receiving instruction at all. But we move forward because the people like the schools like Nims and leaders like Dr. Clark and Jimbo Jackson, Anisha Rem Robinson, Carmen Connor, Jasmine Smith, Delshawna Jackson, Dr. Bolden, and Doug Cook have a plan to remedy that, but we've got to make certain that our kids are in school to operate under the best environments possible.
All right.
And that's where Dr. Bolden comes in and tells you what a great job he's doing, modesty aside.
Whose show is this?
Well,
I'm sorry, Nicole.
Well, I am going to say it's that conversation of equity versus equality. And so, yes, we did a lot of great things, but yet and still, the kids didn't have the same starting point. And so we have kids who are in homes without lights, but yet we're telling them to get online. And so those things create havoc. And then we talked about School Board Member Jones talked about what Title I schools are. We talked about working class families, parent or parents, plural. But what takes away from that idea of that we don't have a parent now who at the house who can help guide that instruction. And so if kid is really falling back, it is difficult for the teacher now to try to navigate that idea of learning online. And so as he has already indicated, that system just don't work for all. There is no one size fit all. And it just really proved to the fact that our kids needed to be on campus, being seen, being touched, being loved each and every day. And so those are some of the major challenges that we're seeing. And then coming into a situation where a lot of our kids come from struggling backgrounds academically anyway, are reading at a below grade level. And so some of those things we had to mitigate. And how do we mitigate that? Get them back on campus. It was super important. I knew COVID was out there, but yet and still they needed to be here. In addition to all of the academic side of it, they still not eating because there's no food in the home. And so we're asking them to read and write and do all of these things. And they're doing it with a hungry stomach and they're doing it with no lights. And so it was super important that we mitigate all of those circumstances and get back to the idea of teaching. Now, I have to celebrate not only the teachers at R. Frank Nims Middle School, but I got to celebrate all teachers, and especially in Title I, who did the difficult task of getting up every day and encouraging these students to still push, even though they could not see their way through the house. It was important for our teachers to be that mode, that protection, that confidant, that angel that they needed. And it was super important. And it still is important today. I value my teachers. I tell them each and every day, I will fight for them each and every day because I know the work that they do each and every day with our kids.
Let me tell you, Nicole, I got to just share this with you. This is important. I'm not taking over the show.
You good?
This is emblematic of what we deal with Title I schools. I remember when we were in school last year where the kids were hybrid. And we asked our kids, we asked our parents to help us to drive down density by those who, look, as we say in the church, whosoever will, right, to keep your kids at home. Let me tell you what's so special about the Title I schools and about the Title I schools, most specifically in District 3. Dr. Benny Bolden there at R. Frank Nims Middle School, his assistant principal, Janelle Bullard, when the teachers would take note of whose faces they did not see. Janelle would
Darryl froze on us.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell the story.
Yeah, go ahead and tell it.
Bullet would leave the campus. She would take the 2 vans that are allocated for all of our schools, her and staff, the guidance counselor, the social worker. They would get in vans and they would go door to door. Not only that, they saw the big dog beware signs. They saw all of those things. They was in the back of the houses knocking on doors to make sure that they can put their eyes on kids, because that was fundamentally important. I know we stay in the community where they say don't answer the door, but it was important for us to know where our kids were and to make sure that they're getting the resources they needed. And so with that is that level of innovation that my team would be able to say, I'm going to push fear out the door. I'm going to take a mask in the midst of COVID, but yet we're going to go door to door to make sure that our kids have the resources. They would take bags of food if they needed it. They would go inside the house and log onto the computer for them, and they would talk to the teacher while they at the house. And so it was a full active engagement of that full hand. When we grew up in our communities, everybody in the community knew your business. You would get beat 5 times before you got to the house.
Yes, sir.
And it worked for us. It worked for us. And so that's important. Even though we're not beating children, quote unquote, it was important that we all have that hands-on approach. What are we doing to make sure that our kids are academically sound? What are we doing to make sure our kids, we can put eyes on them and say they are okay? I can walk away knowing that these kids are okay. That was super important for my staff. And so I'm personally indebted to, Janelle Bullard and all of our counselors and things of that nature, our social workers who do the unthinkable work in spite of COVID to make sure our kids are safe and have the academic structure that they need to be successful.
Awesome. So you mentioned the teachers and the wonderful work that they have done. How has the school, how have you all been supporting them, or as well as the community?
So it is important that you have those conversations, those drastic conversations with teachers. I meet frequently with teachers. I check the pulse of our building. Mr. Jones used to say, you set the temperature of the building. And so it's important for me to understand where, and I mentioned that even in the aforementioned statement at the beginning, that I met with teachers this year already with staff members and just simply asked them, how are you doing? Where are you? What are you feeling? What are some of the emotions that you're feeling? Are you nervous? Are you scared? And those conversations needed to be had, not with just the teacher, because the custodian matter too. The paraprofessional matter too. The bus driver, they matter too. And so it was important for us to feel, and for my staff to feel that level of comfortability. We changed the logo when I got here, and it says care, hope, and love. It is the idea of showing care each and every day, giving them the ability to hope, not just the students, but the teachers too. And you doing that wrapped up in that old adage of love. The scripture in Corinthians say that the greatest of all these gifts is love. And so it was important for us to lead with that aspect of love. And so if I'm not asking you, are you okay? How is your daughter? And I remember you have a life outside of this. And I'm not just a principal that worry about whether or not you come to school and I check that box, but yet I'm asking you about your dad, who's also on the sick bed. No, he's not dealing with COVID, but cancer didn't go away in the midst of COVID. So they just need to know somebody care. Somebody is here for me. And I will in turn teach kids when I know there's somebody rooting for me too.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting chills. I saw a post recently that said the first step to loving is listening. The
Mhm.
first step to loving is listening. So it sounds like you have done a great job of doing that. Look, everybody asking whether or not you a preacher, Dr. Bolden.
He is a preacher.
Yes,
He
I
is called
am.
and anointed.
Yes, I am. But at the end of the day, what I hope people see is not just necessarily a preacher. You see somebody who is excited about what it is he do. If I
Absolutely.
And
ever,
it's ministry.
It
this
is.
is an assignment, and
Mhm.
I want to make sure I hear "Well done, my good and faithful." And so I
Yes.
try to do it to the best of my ability. And as my school board members say, I go to one of them run around churches. So you got to help me because I'll lose it in here. God don't need no coward soldiers. And every time he said it, do something in me, it should burn a light in you to say, I need to do more. And I'm not
Mhm.
doing enough. And that
Mhm.
is infectious because if it's in the leader, it becomes a part of the culture of the building. And so that's
Mhm.
what we're looking for.
That's right. And
Okay.
that's what is so wonderful. And I know we've got a whole lot to talk about, but I can't help but talk about the wonderful leaders I have in District 3. The reason our schools are thriving the way they are is that we realize that leadership determines attitude.
Yeah.
My grandfather said, if you can either be, he told me before I came to college, now, you're a young man. You can make the choice to either be a thermostat or a thermometer. Thermometers merely measure temperature, thermostats set it. And so when
Mhm.
you've got leaders like Carmen Connor and Jasmine Smith, Anisha Rim Robinson, Delshawna Jackson, Jimbo Jackson, Dr. Bolden, and Doug Cook helming your schools, Rusty Edwards, right? You've got Dr. Flanagan, you've got Demetria Clemens, who are leading these Title I schools with great vigor and with an infectious enthusiasm that roll trickles down, as Dr. Bolden would say, and it infects the children. And that's why we're seeing it is, and I have to acknowledge our superintendent. It's
Mhm.
not just the principals that he appointed, which all were great, but then also great principals that he retained.
Mhm.
And then providing them with the resources that they need so that our kids can thrive. So that's what makes this conversation so important because
Yes.
there are other available resources out there that the governor is holding on to. If given to these wonderful leaders, the impact could be exponentially measured and helping us to remedy what we know is the impacts of COVID, which could very well affect us for a generation. But
Mhm.
he
Yes,
would
sir.
rather hold on to that money,
Mhm.
right, as a part of his campaign to be involved in this shoot this.
Daryl.
I'm trying to. I
Try,
can't
you
get.
look like you about to blow your top over there.
But
Listen,
we need those monies. But Dr. Bolden needs those monies.
I
Because
understand.
imagine what those monies would do. One, to uplift his facilities and then equip his teachers to help us to remedy learning loss. And there's a correlation between that and what we're seeing in our headlines.
Okay, so listen. For those who may
I'm
not have
sorry.
the benefit of knowing exactly what you are talking about, they didn't read the newspaper, they haven't tuned in to the school board meeting. Give us the lay of the land as it relates to the governor and funding for school districts in Florida.
At present, the Leon County School District and our superintendent, armed with data that we collect from our school district, makes the purposeful choice to be responsive by creating policy that helps us to create the safest and most optimal environments for instruction and learning. The governor would rather create a policy that is not demonstrative of what we're seeing in our local communities and would dare wrestle local control from elected representatives who populate school districts across the state of Florida. And for those who do not comply with his policy, he has subsequently withheld our salaries. At the same time, there are monies that have been designated by the federal government to come to school districts across the state of Florida that the state of Florida Department of Education could also distribute. those funds are now being withheld and not being distributed to districts like ours. For us, we know that the value of those monies number in the millions. And if those monies were made available to us in Leon County, we know that the impact of those monies could be far reaching, particularly as we now come back to school. We know what our children's needs are. We've done the type of self-assessment of our children so that if armed with those monies, we could respond to what we know has been learning loss. We could also help to fortify our facilities, all of those things that we know work in the best interest of creating optimal environments for instruction and learning.
Okay. Very well said. You put it
The
together.
governor's a bully.
Okay. So I want to hear from you. What can the community do in response to the governor's decision not to fund the school board members?
Well, I've said this before, Nicole, and as a student of history, right?
Mhm.
All three of us are well educated by the Florida A&M University. This is a time for abolitionists, suffragettes, civil rights workers. It's that type of spirit, right? It is that type of ingenuity, that type of passion that we need for parents, teachers, and all interested constituents of this state of Florida to call the governor and the Department of Education and their local representatives, both state senators and state reps, accountable for what I believe is a gross misfeasance of duty by the governor to purposely withhold these funds from our Leon County schools, from our school districts across the state of Florida. Our salaries aside, that's just posturing. I'm not even worried about that. They can, if keeping that salary makes him feel big, so be it. What I want him to do, and this is what is most important to me, is that he make those monies available to our school districts so that Benny can have what he needs to teach his kids.
Okay.
If I could, I want to go a step further than this. If in fact the governor is on the same side of educating children and having a right posture for the educators that are tasked with going in these buildings each and every day, then why not give them a raise? Because they have endured this pandemic. Use those funds to incentivize more academic learning in our buildings. Why not do those things to support what it is we're doing each and every day? The social workers that's going to the house to provide those extra resources. There's guidance counselors that's dealing with more mental anguish than we have ever had in the last couple of years. We got more kids talking about committing suicide than we have ever had before. If you are, in fact, on the side of kids, then there are so many other things we could be doing with the dollars to say that I support the idea of academic engagement with children.
Yes.
But take funding. It is just ludicrous and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This is the part that gets us, Nicole, right? They are they're not blithely unaware, although they're in an ivory tower in that dirty education building they need to wipe down and clean, right? In that same building, they are aware of the mental health trauma that these children are going through. Dr. Bolden will tell you that he has probably had more suspensions in the first 9 weeks of school than he had for the entire year. Why are our children acting up? There's a whole reason. There's a variety of reasons. And we need to be prepared to be responsive and help these kids to work through those issues so that they can get back in the right mind. Imagine this. That sixth grader who came to Nims Middle School this year may not have been in school for 2 years, not since the fourth grade. So now they're in a brand new social construct. And what do people do when it's kind of hard for them to manage their behavior. We're dealing with the same thing at the high schools. But we need the resources beyond what we're already funded, right? But instead, you would rather take resources from us and rather give it to somebody who gets mad at us and doesn't want to wear a mask, give them a Hope Scholarship and take those resources out of the district.
You know, there's an old song that says, "My body's here with you, but my mind is on the other side." So the crazy part about it is those sixth graders, their body is here with me, but their mind is still in fourth grade.
Yes.
And we didn't do anything to deal with those issues.
That's social maturation.
Money away from me that we could be dealing with those issues. And oh, by the way, we still have an assessment. They still have to be tested, and there is still an expectation. That's that equity versus equality. There are so many things we can be doing with the funds outside of just you can't have it because I say so. Our kids can't be the pawn.
No. And that's exactly what he's done. And he's using these monies to weaponize a political agenda that is not in the best interest, particularly of working class families.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But we ain't gonna talk about him. I don't want to talk about him no more.
That's fine.
I didn't say his name.
That's fine.
What I do want to talk about is what can we do as a district to respond, right, to what we know as this childhood trauma. And we've got a variety of resources that are available to us, but we need our parents to reach out to their principals. Their principals are armed with a whole lot of tools, right? Particularly that are managed by Dr. Kathleen Rogers, with intervention services, with Leon County Schools, with community services, with Dr. Michelle Gale. But I want our parents to know that the best resource that the family has is the principal and that teacher, because they genuinely care. They don't want to suspend children. They don't want children to act out. They want to get them what they need. But we need them. But a closed mouth won't get fed. Please, parents, have a relationship with your principals, because there's a whole lot of resources that they can bring to bear to help your kids to optimize their learning.
Absolutely.
I could not agree with you more. And if I could, Nicole, one of the main things, even when I'm talking to parents, is how do we work together?
That's right.
Because, the education that we know of the old, it was a community involvement process when educating the holistic child. And we can't do this alone. I often tell my community of learners, the scholars, is which I call them every day, I want them to be different. 723 West Orange is where we are geographically, but when you come into this building, the mind has to shift. We have to think different. And so I call them scholars and not students, because I got to get them to see themselves differently. What happens in our community, if you allow me to be frank for a second, we post Facebook videos of people fighting in the community and things of that nature, and we celebrate that level of stupidity. Well, kids pick that up as if that is something that is appreciated and or celebrated. And so we have to change that, not only in the school, but in our community too.
Right.
And those are the things. Those are small things. No, you probably can't help them with geometry and me either, because third grade math is just, it looks like geometry these days. But the idea of you can make sure that we're teaching our kids something different. Quincy Jones said it best. I was watching a documentary. He said for the first 70 years of his life, he wanted to be a gangster because that's all he saw. But we got to give our kids a different image.
Right.
And that's why I demand that they can't wear slides. They can't wear hoodies. They have to walk in lines, because a scholar must see what scholarly look like.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to circle back to some of the solutions that are available, but we do have a question specifically about COVID. So Beverly wants to know, on the topic of COVID, is there any support from the schools in the district to support those students who have lost a caregiver due to the pandemic?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that's why it is so critical that whoever the custodial parent is, and in our culture, like for me, I'm a grandma's kid. For my first 7 years, and then the last 3 years of my high school experience, I was in grandma's house. And that's why I told that story about Janelle Bullard, because she knew that kid who was at school, who was at home with a Chromebook, and grandma didn't know how to help. So that's why Janelle would get in her Cadillac and visit that school at home. Well, we know that the impacts of COVID, culturally speaking, in our community, in District 3, are different than what we're seeing in other communities. So that's why it's important that whoever has custody of those children have a relationship with the school, because Tanya Fitzgerald and Dr. Alan Cox have already identified ready-made professionals at all of our schools to provide mental health counseling. That was one of the grants that we received last year, because we knew we had to deal with childhood trauma. It's hard to learn when you're crying and when you're grieving and when you're mournful. So anything we can do to show these children love and help them to deal with this, so one, it doesn't manifest itself in anger or other untoward activity, That's why we've got to make certain that our children get mental health counseling. And parents have to, teachers can identify so much, but it's important that that the parents and whoever has custody of those children make us aware of what these children and the trauma that they go through, so that we can provide that ready-made assistance, particularly those who've lost parents during this pandemic.
In addition to that, we do screeners on all of our kids, which is super important to the idea of what we're trying to make sure we get that information early so we can assess kids and provide that level of comfort. In addition to the social workers and things like that the district provides, our Frank Nims has a fifth counselor, as a matter of fact, who is in a MOU and a contract with Pace Center for Girls, and she's here too, dealing with mental health, because we have seen an uptick and a rise in that idea. We have more individuals on campus providing that. In addition to, I have to say this, the sheriff department, Leon County Sheriff Department, I have a SRO here on campus who is an absolute rock star. And we talk about policing in the neighborhood, but she is reinventing the idea of that. And what does that look like? Because they are trained in so many areas. She's pulling kids from class, doing small groups, all of those things, because it's a hands-on approach. Everybody has to be in the idea of really helping these children. And I have to say, individuals like that, and the sheriff department in all schools are working around the clock to make sure that our kids get the best resources possible, have the individual that they can speak to, as well as building those relationships that add and abate in the idea of what we're trying to do.
Dr. Bolden will also tell you that we've got the 1,000 Jobs Initiative also being led by Sheriff Walt McNeil and Dr. Kathleen Rogers in cooperation with Career Source. We're identifying our children as early as middle school and providing that type of pipeline that serves as a pathway to careers.
Okay.
We want to make certain that we keep our children intellectually engaged and excited about learning. Everybody doesn't want, everybody may not want to go to FAMU, but everybody has intelligence. Everybody has, and we want to make sure that everybody has opportunity. That's why those funds, I got to go back to that money that they're holding on to. That money is so important because it can help us to strengthen those pathways for our kids, that they can remain engaged. They're excited about coming to school because they're going to learn about how to fix a car, or they can use their hands to do electrical. And then not only do they create careers, they can also go into a program where they get their diploma and their certificate from Lively. Then they can go to TCC or FAMU, get an associate's or a bachelor's degree in business, and then they can start their own business and they can become entrepreneurs and job creators themselves. But it starts with us creating the types of pathways here that are so very important.
Absolutely. Very well said. So our dear Anita Favors had a comment.
Hey, mother.
Thanking you, community advocates, and this is serious public business. And she said, "Stay woke, but some things are worth more than talk." So, time for action in the best interest of the student. So,
yes, sir.
Talk about some of the other actions. I mean, you mentioned the mental health component. Talk about some of the other actions that can be taken with these funds.
Well, one of the things that I think is so critically important, and as I hinted on just a moment ago, is pathways to careers. We need to make certain we're making the types of investments in Lively Vocational Technical College, whereby we can make certain we're having the types of inroads all the way back to our middle schools and our elementary schools, where kids become excited about new opportunities for instruction. That it's not just going to be A squared plus B squared equals C squared, but that they can get involved and be exposed to a variety of careers. One of the things I'm going to also recommend at our next school board meeting is that we make certain that we emphasize careers in both law enforcement, fire safety, and EMTs. Those are critically vital careers, and we need to make certain that our students are exposed to those things. So I think that's part of one of the things that we can do. But Dr. Bolden has a variety of inroad programs that he's already targeting young people in careers. Dr. Bolden, modesty aside, you got to tell them about the Nims Law Academy.
Oh, yeah.
So before I get into the Law Academy, I think it's important that we talked about what we can do with the funds, but how can parents aid and help us in this idea? And that's just simply sending your child to school every day. That's equally important. Don't let them sleep in. Don't let them stay home 2 and 3 times a week, because if we're going to really move the academic pendulum, we need those bodies, those individuals here engaged every day, making sure that they go to sleep at night. They can't be in the room playing video games till 2 o'clock and then miss school the next day. Those are little things that we can do that will make a drastic difference. And when we can get 100% of our kids on campus each and every day, that becomes super important. They spend less time outside and in the streets and things of that nature if we can just simply get them to school every day. And so that's just one little snippet. And the other thing about programs, at some point in time, Nims had got down to almost 230 kids. I am from this. I'm not originally from this area, but I was here for undergrad. And I know of Nims. And I know at one point in time teaching here at Bellevue Middle School many years ago, that they even thought about closing this school at one point in time. And so I knew all of that coming into this building. And so we had to change that narrative. And it goes back to what Brother Jones was just indicating. We have to find something to repair the leaks. I did a study on repair the leaks. If we have 100 kids coming in, 6th graders, and only 50 of them are leaving, then we have lost kids along this journey in terms of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so we had to find a mechanism to repair our leaks so we're not losing kids in this process. Some of the things that I did 3 years ago when I first took over as principal was look at intensive reading, intensive math. We know our babies are struggling in reading and math. And yes, they do need those interventions. But do they really want to come to school and they don't have no social aspect, no PE, no band, no chorus, no dance? They're not coming to school for that. So you have more kids out of the building. Ever since I've taken over this school, our enrollment has inclined each and every year. I took intensive reading. I took intensive math away. And we breathed life back into the idea of athletics and activities and electives.
The whole child.
And so all of those things encourages kids to be here. We talk about the law, and I can go down the line, but we just opened up a whole computer room that talks about computers and gaming. And because not only do I want them to play Fortnite, I want to teach them how to build Fortnite. So they're not just making somebody else money. We give them the structure, the avenue, the know-how so that they can build their own game. No, you don't have to go to FAMU to get that, but there's another avenue that we can do. In addition to that, we did the law program to engage our academic learners. For so long, I was losing 3, 4s, and 5s. Those students who are scoring high on FSA didn't want to come because of what they heard about Nims. I have to be honest, I heard it too. But I knew when I took on this assignment that I had to change the perception of our building. It's like your best outfit. It's still your best outfit even when you get a stain on it. And so even though every day I'm working against that stain, but it's still my favorite outfit. And that's what Nims is. It's my favorite outfit. And I'm going to continue to wear it. And so what it was important for us is to give that to kids so they feel that. And so that's what that law program did. So they stopped leaving me to go to Raw and Cobb. And I like those schools. Those principals over there are great, but I want my kids in my community to stay here because we can afford the same thing that any other school can provide, private or public or otherwise. And so it was important for us to do those things. What do? We gave them a law program. We brought in, last year was our first year, 12 students who 10 have just passed the bar. In our second year, which is 6th graders this year, we took in 31 kids, 31 kids who are all level 3, 4s, and 5s who are now staying here at all Frank Nims Middle School. Out of all the schools in Leon County, only 2 schools saw an increase in enrollment during COVID. And that was Pineview, Southside, and R. Frank Nims Middle School, Southside.
Right.
And to that, there was only 2 schools that made math gains in 6th grade. It was Deer Lake Middle School and R. Frank Nims Middle School. Why? Because we're providing those resources so people and students can feel that level of support, feel that love, and they want to stay here. They want to stay in our community. They want to be at this school because it is still the best outfit, even with the stain.
All right, I heard that.
Let me be very clear, Nicole.
Yes.
And I tell this to, and Dr. Bolden will tell you this. I make it very clear as a school board member that I work for them. I am their ambassador. I am the ombudsman of the leaders like Dr. Bolden who manage our schools across our Leon County schools, but most specifically in District 3.
Awesome.
And I'm honored to serve him and all of my principals.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, we're getting a lot of kudos from the viewers.
I
So
do
I,
want to say this, Nicole.
yes,
Let me just
yes,
tell
yes. Go
people
ahead.
about the program itself. We had to reimagine this idea of discipline on our campus. And so we wanted to actively engage. So
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like? So students come in sixth grade, they learn law studies and things of that nature. Their seventh grade year, they take in, and if they pass the bar, which we had 10 of them who did, our speaker was the public defender, Jessica Ure, and they were sworn in by Judge Tiffany Baker.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they can practice law. Students on our campus earn Trojan bucks. They get that from teachers for good behavior, coming to school every day, and things of that nature. If they get in trouble, students can now hire an attorney who would go into mediation and or stay dealing on the discipline that they got in trouble with. Now, if it's something major, because of who I am, I can veto it all. However, if we don't come to a resolution through the mediation or through the stay, then we go to trial. What it does is it gives that perspective of policy and letting kids understand that even if I don't know what's wrong, it doesn't mean I can't be in trouble because of me not knowing the law. And it gives them that reinforcement that they are now involved with their peers. In addition to that, the attorney with the highest GPA represents my administration team. So I have a student advocate lawyer who speaks on my behalf, who I now have to transform this information, because the wealth of information don't matter what my teachers know, anybody in this building. If we can't transfer that information, then we are doomed. And that's what the idea is, giving them this information that we have so that we can arm them and equip them to go out in this big world that is ready to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yes, yes. No, very good point. Very good point. So, what can folks do to help you? I mean, we've already kind of talked about it, but is there anything else that the community can do to support what you all are doing?
I do want to say this. One, be an advocate, be a voice and not an echo. And it's super important that we do that. I have to say this, and he didn't ask me to do this. Darryl Jones is a leading voice in our community. Mm-hmm. He stands on the side of right. He do what is important, even when opposition come his way. Mm-hmm. The only other gentleman I can think about that in that respect is Jesus. He went against the crowd. He went against the noise, but he understood he had to be about his Father's business. Mm-hmm. And while I understand his assignment, I'm deeply humbled by it, because he do it with ridicule, he do it with conversation and chatter, but yet he do it because it is not the people that he has to answer to. It is the God that he has to see when he is alone in his room. Mm-hmm. And that says something to me. So how do we support him? We get on the phone. We become an advocate. We send our kids to school. We become volunteers. We mentor in these buildings, not just our Frank Nims Middle School. Mm-hmm. I would love it when we have a day that all 520 of my kids have a mentor from outside of this building who come and check on them regularly to make sure that they're in school, who make sure they ate every day. Whether they come from a two-parent home or a single-parent home, there is still need in every instance. Mm-hmm. And so those are some of the small things we can do. Adopt a child in one of these buildings and say whatever they need. If they need a pencil, a book bag, call me so I can be the first one there to make sure that we provide those resources. In addition to our superintendent, who stands, I'm telling you, I stand on the shoulders of giants who are willing to stand on the front line. There's a scripture that says, send Judah first. In other words, send praise first. These are the individuals who I believe are praised, who's sitting at the front of the line and say, I'm not going to let you shoot them, but you can shoot me. In the process of me doing good. And so I have to celebrate him.
Look, all we need to do is pass the plate now.
Well, but let me say this, and this is
I'm sorry, Darryl. I got chills listening to y'all. I really do.
Let me tell you to say this, right? And there are those who are critical of the point of view that I take relative to mask. Mask fatigue, pandemic, COVID-19 fatigue is real.
Yes.
Right. I know that people are tired of us talking about it. We see the numbers going down. And that is why I'm grateful for a superintendent who is willing to pivot, as he likes to say, who looks at the data, lets that inform our policy moving forward I appreciate that. But I also want people to appreciate. I'm reminded, Benny is also a band. He's a musician first, a Levite, if I might say. I'm reminded of the words of James Weldon Johnson. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. This pandemic has had impact in our community far different than in other communities. And those tears informs my voice. Those tears inform my perspective. Those tears inform and the name. See, when we talk about numbers, for us, those numbers have names. We can call the names of persons that we know have been impacted by COVID. With those names and with those tears, that informs my voice. That informs my perspective. Yes, I want us to get back to full to put COVID behind us. But as long as we've got people who don't believe in vaccinating, people who are continuing to make reckless choices that put other people's lives in jeopardy, we've got to hold fast on the course that we're on until we get to that place that science tells us that we're at herd immunity and that we can then come back and operate safe, but most safely. But until then, my children need to learn, my teachers need to teach, and I need to do my job to be their voice, particularly for those who I know have been most severely impacted by this disease. So when I say we have come over a way that with tears has been watered, we're still our boots, our feet are still wet.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to take the point of view that I have. And if you'll notice, Dr. Bolden will tell you, Dr. Carmen Connor and Jasmine Smith will tell you that we have not seen the mask out option. Our parents are still keeping their children safe.
Right.
Because they too know the names. And so that's why this is so important. So so whatever I can do, let me tell you something else that most people don't know. Can I let them be a fly on the wall, Dr. Bolden? I call my principals before every school district meeting. And whatever we got on the agenda, whatever we're talking about, I ask them, because our principals are so important as a part of this discussion, because they, unlike us at the school board and at the district office, they are engaged with our three principal constituents all day, every day: students, parents, and faculty and staff. So how can I lead? What did Reverend Miles used to say, Nicole, when we were in school? I cannot teach what I do not know. I cannot lead where I do not go. So I talk with them, and when they tell me, they express to me their reality, particularly at the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level, that informs my perspective. And I couldn't do my job effectively without talking with them. And that's why I'm grateful to each and every last one of them. I call their names: Jimbo Jackson, Anisha Rim Robinson, Delshana Jackson, Carmen Connor, Jasmine Smith, Benny Bolden, and Doug Cook, principal of the flagship high school here in Leon County, the James S. Rickards High School.
Wonderful. Well, this has been an outstanding discussion. I'm so glad you all joined me. We do have some comments. Dr. Gail is giving some information about the volunteer mentor office. So
Dr. Gail is a rock star.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
She's a rock star. I told you, when you need the additional resources, go to talk to your principal, but also talk with Dr. Rogers and Dr. Gale. And all of our assistant superintendents and their own respective responsibilities are great.
Indeed.
Yes.
Superintendent Hannah has an awesome team.
Yes, he does. There's some survey also that someone is mentioning. So,
Benny, y'all got a survey?
Yeah, Martina Davis Taylor, a survey says share your input to give our students to the public schools they deserve and ask others to do the same. So I'm not sure, but I guess we can check that out. Let me see.
Survey Monkey, that's not a Leon County survey.
That's not a Leon County survey. Okay.
No.
All right. Well, get information about volunteering. Again, here it's in the chat. Dr. Gail gave us that information. As Dr. Bolden has said, be an advocate. As Darryl Jones has said, become familiar with your principal, because your principal has a wealth of resources that you may not be aware of that can help.
And be politically engaged.
Yes, and be engaged. Be an advocate. Be an advocate. Yes. All right. Any closing remarks from the brethren before we wrap it up?
I'm gonna let the Honorable Darryl Jones go.
Okay.
No, Dr. Bolden, you go ahead and I'll say a little something on the end. But let me thank you both. Nicole, for convening this important conversation.
Absolutely.
And Dr. Bolden for saying yes.
I appreciate the
and to share your expertise in this format. I wanted to make certain that our parents are aware of what we've got going on, the intellect and ingenuity found in the district, and the important role they play in remedying what we know are the serious situations and impacts and implications found in our Leon County School District. We wanted to make sure that they were aware of how they could engage. And I want to thank you for being such a great spokesman on behalf of our Leon County schools today.
I appreciate the invitation to be a part, and I hope this conversation ignite a fire in all of the listeners, whether they're here tonight or watch the video later, to want to be involved. There was an old pastor that I think is a mentor, and he said, "You can't sick the dog on the pig you play with," and so it's important for us to be involved in this conversation. And we can't sick the dog on the pig we play with, so we got to choose a side. The scripture says, "You lukewarm, he'll spew you out." And so it's important for us to be on the side of children, and then also that of the adults that have been charged with the idea of pushing this. There's one of my favorite poems I want to leave with you, Charles McKay, and it says, "It's no enemies." And I leave this because it really galvanized me in my thought and what I try to do each and every day. And it says, "You have no enemies, you say. Alas, my friend, the boast is poor. He who has mingled in the fray of duty, the brave endure. Must have made foes. If you have none, 5 small is the work that you have done. You've hit no trait on the hip. You've dashed no cup from perjured lips. You've never turned wrong to right. You've been a coward in the fight."
Oh,
Well,
you got to stick to that one.
That's a word.
Look here, Nicole, if I don't quote that Tuesday, they will hear that again. And when I read it, when I say it, I'm not going to quote Charles McKay. I'm going to say Dr. Bolden in District 3. When the audience gets up and they start to rail, I have to remember, I said, I'm saved, but I ain't soft. I'm saved, but I ain't soft. I'm going to read that poem to our public.
Right.
But on a serious note, this is why this conversation is so important. I just want our people to know, and I am a person of faith. I'm a member of the Bethlehem Church, and my faith defines my work as a public servant. And I want our people to know, I want our public to know that for those of us who have a faith walk, I want you to know that this is a time, these circumstances should call all of us to prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Scripture says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against powers and principalities and wickedness in high places. And what we're seeing manifest here, when people use extortion and other tactics to get their way, when people are just trying to do the right thing, who are trying to evidence love for their fellow man, we know that that is not of God, and that is not love. And so I'm asking all of our parents and everyone who hears this call that, as simple as it may be, prayer has power. And I'm asking our community to come together as a remnant of God and to be in prayer as we wrestle against wickedness in high places. that we can that the evil one who's walking to and fro, seeking whom he can devour, he cannot have our children.
Mm.
Nicole, when I was a kid growing up, I used to watch wartime movies with my grandmother. That she loved wartime movies and she loved westerns. And I remember the movie Patton when they stood around a display, a diorama, and they were making choices in terms of strategies in war. And I remember how chilling it was to me to hear them talk about anticipated casualties. Well, we anticipate 30,000. We anticipated casualties of 10,000. I want people to understand that there's something very sinister afoot here. School board members did not seek election, and nor do teachers or any of us involved in education sought this role of responsibility with the thought and notion of anticipated casualties. We want our children and our teachers and everyone in our school district and our community at large to thrive. And I cannot and will not, no matter what the policy that comes from the state, make choices that will in some way potentially have anticipated casualties. So I ask that people continue to pray for our nation, pray for our state, pray for our Leon County schools. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then repent of their sins, then will I hear from heaven and heal the land. So that's what I'm asking our people to do, and continue to pray for our teachers and our principals and everyone in our school district. They are genuine heroes.
Absolutely.
Nicole, he put this out there, and I thank you, Jones, but he said he's a proud member of Bethel AME.
Yes.
To let him know that I am a proud member of Family Worship in the Praise Center.
F-Dub,
where Pastor Quincy B. Griffin Sr.
And I'm proud of my church, the Bethel African Methodist, where the Reverend Dr. Julius H. McAllister
Yes,
Jr.
he is a proud,
love my pastor.
And Assistant Superintendent Dina McAllister is the First Lady.
oh my goodness.
I love y'all so much. I love you. 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 Thank you.
Thank you. So listen, I want to also, challenge. I'm a woman of faith as well. So Darryl talked about praying, and that is important. Yeah. But we need to go to work. They gave you a whole litany of things. Faith, exactly. I was just about to say, faith without works is dead. So get to work, people. Let's keep this conversation going, but let's get to work. Volunteer, get involved with the school, advocate. Okay, we got to do our part, because you see, our public leaders, our leadership is there. They have just spelled it out for you, told you all of the things. Well, some of the things that need to be done, and there's even much more. So. Thank you both for this great conversation, and we wish you much success, and please don't hesitate to let us know how, again, as we move forward, we can assist you with the greater works that you are doing.
Nicole, as a parent, would you mind telling our public where your son graduated high school?
My son attended Rickards High School under the direction of principal at the time, Dr. Michelle Gale. So, yes, he is a product of Leon County Schools, Fairview, Hartsfield. So, yes.
Remind him that the Mecca
has yes, absolutely. Again, thank you both so very much. I appreciate this. Y'all have to come back and give us an update on what's going on. We look forward to the praise report of the great things that you all have suggested, that those things will come to pass and manifest, just as you have said. So
you see the man over my shoulder, Nicole?
I do.
All right.
I do. So for those of you who can't see the man over his shoulder, it is
Dr. Frederick S.
Humphreys.
My president.
Our president. All three of us. All three of us.
President.
Yes, our president. We are of the Humphreys era.
Yes, we are.
And I believe that he is deliciously proud of us three.
He is deliciously proud. Yes, indeed. Real quick, and this is a shameless plug. So tomorrow I have a live that I want to invite you all to come to at 6:00. Kenneth Jones, who actually teaches at FAMU in the journalism school, he has a movie that he'll be debuting called My Music. It's about a caregiver and Alzheimer's and dementia. This is something that we struggle with in our community. So we're going to have a conversation around that tomorrow evening, right back here at 6:00. So join us if you can. Thank you, Darryl. Thank you, Dr. Bolden. Appreciate y'all so much. I really do.
I got this part in my hair for you, Nicole.
You know, you are looking so sharp. I think Rashid got on here and talked about how sharp you're looking tonight, Darryl. It did not go unnoticed. Trust and believe it did not go unnoticed.
Class of '88.
Both of y'all, sharp as a tack. Look. Sharper than a two-edged sword. Listen, we gonna go because we could be on here talking forever.
I love y'all. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
All right. Mm-hmm.